It's the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 13, Episode 9. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network, brought to you by HK. Today is Thursday. I almost said Wednesday. I'm off a day of this week because I had a travel day Monday. Thursday, February 26, 2026, as of this recording. And I'm your host, Riley Bowman. And I'm joined today by a special guest, Caleb Giddings. We'll do a formal intro momentarily, but say hello, Caleb.
Hey guys, nice to be here.
Glad to have you. Today's episode, we're going to dive right into the world of Caleb Giddings. We're going to have a fun chat. We're talking about a lot of different things today. We'll kind of see where the conversation leads. But before we went live, we were talking about, I think, Caleb, you said you've been doing this about 20-ish years now, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a career pretty much right there, man. So, yeah, good times. And I've been doing this officially full time for about half that time frame, and in some capacity for probably 15-ish years. But anyway, we'll talk about everything you got going on because you work at Taurus, and I think that'll be interesting to catch up and see what you guys got going on over there. We'll talk about getting people into guns, into training. We'll talk about whatever floats our boat. It'll be a fun chat. So stick around, folks. But today's episode is sponsored, brought to you by KSG Armory Holsters. We do our best at KSG Armory to make the finest concealed carry equipment and gear possible. We make a lot of different holsters for a lot of different guns, and we're working actively right now on increasing that list to support Taurus firearms as well. So that's another thing to potentially talk about with Caleb on or off air as we continue to try to bring more of those to the masses as far as different holsters. But guys, if you're looking for serious gear made by people that actually carry and know what is involved in carrying a gun, especially concealed, we hope that you would look no further than ksgarmory.com. So, told you to keep it brief, Caleb. There's the intro. Let's jump in. Tell us where does it all begin for Caleb Giddings? Like, what got you started? I think you've been shooting most of your life, but like, what's your defining early moment that got you really into guns?
My early defining moment that got me into guns was The Last of the Mohicans. When I was
Ooh,
in I was in high school when that movie came out, and it's one of those like quintessential gun guy movies, right? Like
yeah.
everybody who is a gun guy has seen The Last of the Mohicans, and if you're one of the 15 people out there who hasn't seen it, it's on one of the many streaming services. You have to go watch it. But when I was probably 14, 15, and my best friend and I at the time got absolutely obsessed with that movie. And there's this shooting culture, shooting sports. It's less of like, today we would call it cosplay, but back then they were called
Mm,
rendezvous, and it was basically like people who would get together and they would dress up in colonial period costumes, and there would be shooting matches with period accurate guns from the time frame and stuff like that. There were like tomahawk throwing contests, and that was what kind of lit a fire in me, both for shooting as more than just like going to the range to occasionally plink at targets, versus even doing a standing black powder competition against 20 other dudes. I was like, oh, this is cool, you can actually like win stuff. And then you know, I progressed. I went on with my life. I did, this, that, and the other thing. And in 2006, I forget what I was doing for a living. I think I was a State Farm agent at the time in '06. I might have still been working for hotels, but regardless, that was when I started USPSA. And I know because USPSA will tell you the year that you
mm,
joined, and it was
yep.
2006. It was January of 2006. I joined USPSA, and I joined IDPA shortly thereafter. And I started my journey in the shooting sports, and I realized that this is an expensive hobby, and but that I had a talent for writing. I had
Mm,
a talent for the written word, so I was so I was because I had a talent for the written word, I was like, all right, well, I can try to, essentially fund my habit by writing magazine articles. And my first article was published on outdoorlife.com in 2006. And from there, that was what started my journey into more and, gradually going from a part-time freelancer in the gun industry to being full-time in the gun industry. So from there, I ended up doing a collaboration with. I started from there. I eventually started a back when like gun blogs were the thing. I started a
Hmm.
blog. It became fairly popular. At one point, it was the third largest shooting sports gun firearms related blog online. I met Michael Bain, who is a producer for
Yeah.
the Outdoor Channel in '08, and went on a media event, my first gun industry media event in '08 to Blackwater of all places, back when
Mm.
Blackwater was a place. That was really cool. Made a lot of fun content out of that. And then the next year, Michael sent me an email and he was like, "Hey, I'm hearing about this show that they're going to start filming, and it's going to be like Survivor with guns. And I know the producers. You should put in an application for it because you're good on camera." And I was like, "Sure." And that show, for people who don't know what I'm talking about, turned into Top Shot, and that was. That first season of Top Shot, because I was on the first season, I made it through 5 episodes, which I didn't win. I didn't even make it to like the when they, I got eliminated when it was still red team, blue team. But because it was so unique, because it was such an unusual thing and remains an unusual thing because it was a gun show on on primetime network television. That doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore. There's none of that.
Yep.
But because it was so unique and because it was such a cool thing, it allowed a lot of us that were on the show that had, quote unquote, real jobs to sort of grab for that brass ring and n- not do those jobs anymore. And I was able to quit being a State Farm agent and essentially work full time in the gun industry. Since that, I've taken some, hiatuses here or there, but pretty much since Top Shot in 2010, I've been full time in the firearms industry. And it has been, my wife likes to say that I have a Peter Pan job because I'm never going to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that. That's awesome. And also just hearing you mention, connecting with Michael Bain, who I've known for a number of years now as well. And like, just, it's just fun to get people's story and kind of see all the different links and connections
Hmm.
and things that have sort of, led a person to where they are today. I'm sure a lot of folks could say, Michael Bain is a part of their story as well.
And it's
Um,
also a good reminder too for, people who are in this industry and maybe forget, or people who are looking to enter this industry in is that this industry is very, very small. We are at the professional level, the size, the firearms retail space is very large. It's billions and billions of dollars. But when you're talking about the very specific media content creation space, it's really, really small. There's a
oh yeah.
very good chance that if you are talking to someone about someone else, that the person you are talking to them about has either met them, at the very least has met them, and also, or even more likely knows them and has an opinion about them one way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of truth to that. It's sometimes it's you go to like SHOT Show and you see how big it is and all the different companies and all the people and all the media companies and everybody, and it's like, it's huge at the same time. Like it is big, but it's also small.
Mhm.
And it is especially small compared to some industries and communities out there. But so let's spend a moment, and I know we got some more introduction, I think, to share, but tell us a little bit about your experience on Top Shot. Like, what was that like?
It's funny because if you'd done this interview with me 5 years ago, I would have had the explicit provision coming into the industry that I didn't want to. Well, not 5 years ago, definitely 7 to 10 years ago, I would have explicitly had the provision that I didn't want to talk about Top Shot.
Hmm.
And there was a time in my life where I had a really complicated relationship with the show because I had done so much since the show that I didn't want to be known as the guy from Top Shot. I wanted to
Right.
be known as, the guy who holds the ICOR high hit factor for El Presidente in Classic Division, or, the guy with the fast coin, or whatever, like actual,
Yeah.
or a good writer. There's so many things that I wanted to be known for other than the guy from Top Shot. But now, as I've gotten older and matured, which is, you either my dad used to say, you either die or you mature. These are your choices. And I was like, excellent point, Dad. Turns out there's a third choice, which is don't ever get any sense of maturity. But I took the message to heart. Um, but at the time, the experience was it was amazing, and I'm glad that it happened to me in that space in my life because I wasn't experienced enough to be cynical about it. I think that if, the version of me that exists today, if had to go back and do that, I would be cynical about it. I would be looking to, I would be looking, what's my angle? How can I do
Mm.
something? How can I turn this into a profit opportunity for myself? And when I went, I did the show. I was in my, mid 20s. Yeah, I was in like my mid 20s. Um, and the only thing that I wanted to win. Of course, everybody wants to win,
Oh yeah.
but the biggest thing that I wanted that I didn't want to do was I didn't want to embarrass my mom on TV. Like that was
Mm.
it. Like I didn't want to be like that reality TV jerk off. And I didn't that was my thing, was I'm like, please God, don't let me do something on TV that I will get a phone call from my dad about when the episode airs. And I didn't. So I was pretty pleased with that. But the actual experience of like filming a TV show is wild. People don't the thing that I tell people, that anyone who's heard me talk about the show has heard me say is, Top Shot was great in that they didn't try to edit a narrative into the show that didn't necessarily exist, right?
Mhm.
Um, And so pretty much what you saw on TV was what happened, with at least with our seasons and the episodes that I was on. The the reality of reality television is that for every minute you get of a produced reality TV show, there's somewhere in between 400 and 600 minutes of footage that are just cut, that they shoot, that are
Yeah.
on the cutting room floor. They can be interviews, they can be B-roll, it's all kinds of stuff, but there's so much content that gets shot. And what that gives, and what reality TV has evolved into today, is the ability to use all of that footage and maybe show you events happening in a different order than they happened, or show you conversations out of context that they happened, to build a narrative, right? Like there's a reason why reality TV shows have editors, right? There's a reason why people who
Yep.
work for the Writers Guild work on reality TV shows, and it's because the human brain loves narratives. We like a storyline, and being able to craft that from the footage makes the shows more engaging for a lot of people. On my season, there was not a lot of there wasn't really any of that I perceived, having been there and then going back and watching the episodes. They very much did it in a chronological, here's what happened sort of order, which we appreciated, because I remember I would get asked a lot. I would get asked a lot, like, "Is that what actually happened?" I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much. Like, you're missing maybe this, that, or the other thing, but that's pretty much what happened on the show." Um, and what's been the thing that for me that has, I don't want to say rehabilitated, but that has, I will say it rehabilitated my relationship with the show as I've gotten older, was the number of people that have recognized me from the show and have told me that either that's what got them into the shooting sports, like that's what got them interested in firearms and shooting, or like Well, I was at IDPA Nationals
Mm.
last year, and this guy on my squad, I won't say who, but he shoots for Team Beretta, and it's not JJ. Um, but this guy on my squad was like, "Hey man, I just wanted to let you know that like I used to watch Top Shot with my dad when I was growing up, and
Mm.
I was like, you have like three kids. How are you old enough to have watched it with your dad and have three like?" And that was when I kind of did the math on how long ago the show came out, and I was like, "You can't talk to me for the rest of the match. I don't want to making me feel old, man." Um, but no, the what what rehabilitated my relationship with the show and allowed me to, not resent being recognized as the guy from Top Shot anymore, which I know that sounds crazy. And I want to like before people are like, "Oh yeah, you were on a TV show and you didn't like being recognized for being on TV." I understand that's ridiculous, all right? And I fully accept the criticism for that. I can't help that emotional reaction. It's just part of, you do a thing, but then you do other cool things and you want people to recognize the other cool
Yep.
things. Um but what really helped that relationship was the number of people who had such a fond memory of the show, whether it was because it got them into shooting, because they watched it with their dad, or, for whatever reason. And, what right do I have to be a curmudgeon about that when this TV show brought joy to so many people? Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and it did. It was so unique and it was such a special thing. Like, you know, there's there will never be another show like Top Shot. You're never going to get a primetime major cable network show that's not only just about guns, but presents guns as safe, fun, educational, and entertaining. Like, what? How did we hit that jackpot? Like, what
Hmm.
happened? Like,
Yeah.
it's such a unicorn in the history of American television entertainment.
Yeah. It makes me sad to hear you say that. At the same time, I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. That's there'll never be another show like that on a major
Yeah,
network channel.
because like, and
Yeah.
someone could do it. You could do it on the outdoor channel, but
Yeah.
that's a captive audience. Those people already
Yeah.
want to see that show. What made Top Shot so special was that it was on the History Channel, and that was at the heyday of the History Channel, like when they were just
Yeah.
doing numbers.
Deadliest Catch and,
Oh yeah,
all these huge shows.
they
Shark
had. I mean, they
Week,
had.
where
Well, and they
that was
also had
Discovery Channel.
that was
Anyway,
Discovery, but
yeah,
what they
still,
did have that was a huge show that aired,
yeah,
and it aired back to back. I want to say there, yeah, no, it was on Tuesdays, but they had Mail Call with Arlie Ermy, and that was
yeah,
another show that presented, because it wasn't always about guns on Mail Call, but he would do segments with firearms about firearms, and again, for a brief period in time, you had two shows on one of the most popular cable networks that presented firearms as fun, safe, entertaining, and educational, and that I mean, I do hate to say it, but that era of American television is gone. It's over.
mm,
You just won't see it again. I mean, and the History Channel sucks now, right? I don't
yeah.
care about aliens building the pyramids because they didn't. We know who built the pyramids, guys. It wasn't space aliens.
Anyway, tangent off. Back
I'm
on.
good. Sorry, sorry. I'm excellent at tangents. I got a whole one about the moon landings. They happened. They were real. We went.
Yeah. No, that's yeah. And and we were talking before we went live about how the History Channel has literally brought some people into being gun owners, bringing them into the gun community, into the gun culture, so to speak, that might not have happened otherwise for some of those people. I would say that I'm a lifelong, shooter. I grew up in a rural community and guns was just a part of life, but I didn't really know or understand or appreciate what like good shooting really looked like because I
Mm-mm.
wasn't exposed to it until I watched a show like Top Shot. So I'm outing myself right now. I mean, that was still, yeah, just 15, 16 years ago. Even at that point, I like I kind of was vaguely aware because I'd probably seen like my recollections I'd seen something here or there occasionally about like say Jerry Mitchellek or something, and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, that's that really go fast guy, you just into in your mind that's like a one off, and then all of a sudden you see this show with multiple people who are skilled shooters. And you're like, wow, like that's really cool. And so that's honestly that's part of my story is I would say Top Shot is honestly my first like real exposure to what good shooting, could be or what it looks like.
That's awesome.
So
And I
yeah,
think
I mean,
it's
go ahead.
well, and one of the interesting things about Top Shots too was it, and this is something that we still deal with as a shooting sports community to this day, but we tend to define good shooting within the framework of the sort of shooting that interests us, right?
Mhm.
Like someone who shoots 3 USPSA matches a month and dry fires, their definition when they think of a good shooter, they think of a top 16 grandmaster, right? But somebody
Right.
who is has a President's 100 tab and competes at Camp Perry every year, they think of a good shooter as someone who, is a, just locked in bullseye shooter. And the same for F class and PRS and all of these other different ways that you can define a good shooter. And what made Top Shot very interesting, I think, for a lot of people was if you look at the guys who won it, none of them were grandmasters or equivalent in their sport, right? Like nobody was
Mhm.
like the cream of the crop in their specific discipline. All of the guys that won it were really good at they weren't they none of them were the best at one thing, but they were all pretty good at
Yeah.
everything, and they were able to
Yeah.
master that multi-dimensional, multi-discipline skill set to be able to get rifle hits at 200 yards with iron sights, then transition and shoot a pistol at a large target, fast and accurate. And that was what that I think that was what made it really interesting to people, was because if you were a bullseye guy and you were tuning in to watch, Tara, who was on the first season with me, held like a woman's record in bullseye, like a couple of them, right? Like national records at the time. And so, you knew Tara and you're tuning in to watch her because she's your friend. And then you see JJ just going boom, 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 boom. And you're like, oh, what is this kind
Yeah.
of shooting I've never seen before?
Yep. Exactly. No, I agree. That was definitely a part of the appeal of the show. And so when I say like good shooting, I mean every example that you saw. I mean, I don't remember even at this point. I don't remember all like they all kind of like meld
Hmm.
together in my head. All the different seasons, all the different episodes. But I remember seeing episodes with throwing like basically throwing rocks and
Hmm.
and atlatls and bows and arrows and muzzle loaders and revolvers and sniper rifles, you could say, right? 50
Hmm.
cals to typical practical semi-automatic pistols. So I mean, like, the gamut of stuff. And you're exactly right that I mean the guys and gals that did the best had to be well rounded, or at least able to adapt quickly to all those different things. There were a few, like I think JJ actually made it pretty far that first
He
season,
did.
so his skill set definitely carried him a long way. But
Yeah,
you're right, like
absolutely.
the guys that did the best tended to be able to shoot pretty much anything.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, and I mean, and that's, and if you're listening to this and you think I'm down on any sort of specific discipline, no,
yeah.
because at the end of the day, right, like all shooting is aligning the sights and the trigger, is aligning the
Hmm.
sights on the target and pressing the trigger in a way that is appropriate for your target presentation and doesn't knock your sights off target, right? Like
Exactly.
that's all shooting is. Everything else we do, whether it's grip, stance, position, is to allow us to perform those specific actions in the way that's appropriate for the thing that we're shooting at. And that level of context, so if you are a good, if you're a good bullseye shooter, you're gonna have a base that translates well to other stuff. If you're a good USPSA shooter, you're gonna have a base that translates well to other stuff. I think with Top Shot, I think maybe the only thing that probably wouldn't translate super great is if you were like a competition archer, but I'm only saying that out of ignorance because I don't know anything about archery, like competition archery. I assume that you're
Sure.
still lining up some sort of aiming reference on something. So,
Right. Yeah, and whatever that is, again, I think it does come back to you got to keep that sight or whatever on the target until you
mhm.
release that arrow,
Yeah, absolutely.
or, or you're going to miss. But yeah, so man, that's good stuff. I appreciate you allowing me to go. Like we can
No,
move on
yeah.
from this, I think, but I think just making that point that hey, you know, this was a cool. This is a part of your journey. This is a part of even my journey in a smaller extent. Um, but it brought people into the shooting world in a big way, and I think that's a really cool thing. You got to be a part of that. So um, let's see. You mentioned a couple other things. You know, so like let's introduce the rest of Mr. Giddings. All right, fast coin. What
Yeah.
is that for people that don't know?
So yeah. So for people that don't know, the Fast Coin is a an award that you can get from now back. It's now back with pistoltraining.com, which is run by Simon Golub. Uh, the uh, it's the fundamentals accuracy and speed test, and the drill itself is very straightforward. It's you start with 2 rounds loaded in your gun, draw, shoot 2 at a 3x5 index card, reload from slide lock, and fire 4 shots at an 8-inch circle. Uh, and it has to be done from concealment or an actual LE duty holster. And um, and if you do it in a class with Simon and you get it twice under 5 seconds, you get a fast coin. As of right now, I think 20 something coins have been awarded. It started off again at pistoltraining.com back when the late Todd Green was running pistol training. He came up with this as a way to, test on-demand performance. Also, to incentivize people to come to the class, right? People like to get things and they
Hmm.
like to win awards. And it skyrocketed in popularity for a while. After Todd passed, Ernest Langdon took over administering the fast. Ernest is the one who awarded me my coin, actually. I tried to get it from Todd, but I wasn't quite good enough on that day to get it. I took 2 tries to get it from Ernest, and then now again it's with Simon Golub, who is running pistoltraining.com. And if you guys don't know who Simon is, he's awesome. He's a good friend of mine, so I might be a
Hmm.
little biased, but he's a former FBI SWAT guy. He has had a long career with the United States government, going to fun places as well. He is an extremely accomplished shooter. He finished, I want to say, second or third in carry optics last year in at Bianchi Cup. So he's no slouch either.
Yep.
He's the second or third fast coin holder. He was close friends with Todd, so it was only natural for him when he finally retired from the government to take over the fast.
Yeah. Uh, I had the distinction of TACCON 2024. Yeah, it was 2024. The shoot off, and I was everything was going great. I was, winning my head to heads until I got to Simon Golub, and it was a close race, but he got me, and he ended up, I think winning the whole thing. But yeah, he's a heck of a shooter for sure. I look
Very good
forward to
shooter,
connecting with him again next
very
month,
good
actually.
instructor.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fast coin was one of those, like, so I have this thing, I call them range Pokemon, right? Because you got to catch them
Yeah.
all.
Right.
And the fast coin was the first one that I got. There's a lot of them out there now. They've become very popular marketing tools with instructors
Hmm.
to have like your range Pokemon. And I think kind of the defining ones to me, and everybody can disagree and they can be like, no, my instructor's Kung Fu is the best Kung Fu. Um, the defining ones to me are the Fast Coin, the Modern Samurai Project Black Belt standards, and then the
Hmm.
Gabe White Turbo Pin standards. I think
Hmm.
those are kind of and again, this isn't to talk trash about any other instructor or anything like that, but when I think of the range Pokemon that have the most value, that it's those three. And if there's and at least to my knowledge, I don't believe there's anyone who has a fast coin, a black belt patch, and a turbo pin. But I could be wrong about
Mm.
that. I don't.
Yeah,
I'm not. I
I'm
know
not
there's
sure on that either.
lots of people who have two,
Yeah.
and there's lots of people who have two of them. But I don't know if there's anyone out there who has three. If you hear this and you're the one who has three, like, let us know, because that's pretty rad. That's an incredible shooting accomplishment, actually.
Hmm. Yeah, you're talking
Um,
like pretty much all of these are done, under quite a bit of pressure
mhm.
in typically a class environment with people watching and high expectations, and so it can be a lot of pressure for sure.
Oh man, I had when I finally got my coin, I was in Ernest's class, and uh, my best friend was there, so that was pressure because obviously you don't want to like look dumb in front of your best friend. I've known Ernest at that point for years, so there's that pressure of that as well. And then also there's this guy named Tom Givens in my class as well, like taking Ernest's class, and I'm like, so no pressure or anything, right? Like only one of the most renowned firearms instructors of all time is just on the line with us as a student as I'm trying to do this. And I'm like, criminally, couldn't I just been like bunch of random dudes that I don't know? That'd be so much nicer.
Yeah, I think it was my last time to go for a black belt. Which, by the way, I have come like this close a handful of times, and it's always like one stupid thing. Like more than once, I've missed it just because of I get like the 3 and 2, the very first one, no, or yeah, I think it's the first one, and then the draw at 7, and then the bill drill at 7. Then you go back to 25 yards, right?
Hmm.
The 25-yard shot I have missed by an inch or less multiple times to miss the black
I
belt patch.
I
So,
did that with the turbo pin recently. I was in a class with Gabe, and I needed one more good drill to hit the standard. And I was running an iron-sighted revolver for this,
mm,
and I was on my last drill of the day, and I know I needed to nail it, and I absolutely smoked. And it was on the 4x2 drill, so it's 4 to the body, then 2 to the head, right?
mm,
And I get the gun out and I go boom, 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 and I know the first 3 shots are in, and I start to transition the gun because I'm trying to get that because that's where you can really save time is that transition from the body of the head. And I
yep,
pull the trigger on the 4th shot, and I know it's out. And then I
yeah.
drill the 2 headshots, and that 4th one landed outside the A box in the shoulder, just because I was trying to drive the transition. So I was like, oh, it was one of those,
Yep.
an inch lower, and I would have been the only person to ever get a turbo pin with a revolver. But that's okay. I'm gonna take another
Yeah,
take another whack at it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, the shooting accomplishments. I've spent a lot of time on the range. I have a fast coin. I have a light pin, which I got with a revolver. I have the Graybeard Actual. I have his what he calls it, his not
Oh,
3x5, 5x5.
y
It's
yeah.
something by
I have the
five.
same thing. I should
Yeah,
know. Matt,
yeah, we both
kick me
have
in
the
the teeth next
patch.
time you see me.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, no, I think it is the 3x5 car. The three, no, it's fudge. That's gonna bother me. And I said
Yep.
I got a fudge out of there too, so we're doing all right. We're doing all right. Um, Hang on. You know what, Matt? I'm sorry, I forgot the name of your drill. My sincerest apologies. I've got that one.
Here you
Um,
go. The 345. Duh, there it is.
345. That's
3.45.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the
Yeah.
345. Okay, so yes, I have that one.
Yep.
Um, one of the hardest things that I did as a shooter was I made master in Icor's Classic Division, and that was tough. That was really, really tough.
Mhm.
But I had kind of a lot of time on my hands during COVID, so I was just going to the range and just like I went to the range and I shot and I practiced classifiers, right? So that I could, burn them down and then make make my classification, which there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go do that, like you have to be good at shooting to go. I'll never make fun of people like, you and I have all heard the phrase the paper GM or paper M or that sort of thing. I will never make fun of people for that because if you have the time and the dedication to put in the practice to go shoot enough classifiers to get M or GM, you're still a pretty damn good shooter.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
you are not bad at shooting. And I feel like the only people who complain about paper GMs are in B class anyways. So
Yeah, no, you're probably not wrong about that. Yeah. No, that's a great point. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you could be a paper GM and maybe you don't do the greatest at nationals, at a 20 plus stage match, but yeah, you're still a legit shooter for sure.
yeah.
Well,
Um yeah. And then, just to wrap up my biography, we'll put a little bow on it here. I've been, I wrote, I was a content creator. I still am a content creator. I still write, still produce articles and videos and stuff like that. Now I work full time in in marketing for Taurus USA and the family of companies that we own. So Taurus, Rossi, and Heritage. And then I saw someone put in the chat, USAF with a heart emoji. I
Mhm.
am. I've been in the Air Force, in the reserves for 13 years now. I've spent most of my time as a combat arms instructor, so a firearms instructor for the Air Force. I've had some fun deployments, had some really interesting adventures, and have really enjoyed that part-time job, which is way more work than most part-time jobs. Um, has also
Mhm.
been really beneficial for my firearms industry career because it's allowed me to have, as an instructor, it's given me a really good sense of context that I don't know if I would have gotten, because when you teach institutionalized classes like that, it helps you. I think if you do it and you have the right mindset about it, it can make you better at teaching, open enrollment classes, right? Because if I can manage to take a student who doesn't want to be there and would rather be doing anything other than being on the gun range and at least get them proficient enough to qualify, then that
Yeah.
makes me better at teaching somebody who is open-minded and enthusiastic.
Yeah. I agree with that. I've had that same experience. Granted, I'm no longer in law enforcement at all, but back when I was an agency instructor, that was kind of the same experience. That
Mhm.
that context is very helpful, as you said, to just yeah, trying to teach people that don't really want to learn necessarily, but
Mhm.
and then you teach classes where people really want to learn. It just gives you kind of yeah, it gives you a lot of really great context to work with as an instructor. So it made me work really hard as an instructor, in law enforcement to be a good instructor,
Mhm.
because I mean, just trying to keep people engaged in a class
Oh
can be a
yeah,
challenge, right?
absolutely.
So yeah, that's good stuff. So let's talk a little bit more about your work at Taurus. So you've been doing that a couple of years now.
Yeah,
Uh,
so my first the first time I consulted with Taurus on a project before they brought me in full time was about 6 years ago now. It was in 2020 during COVID. And they brought me in to consult on the project that would eventually become the executive grade revolvers.
mhm.
And from there, I worked with them on a couple more things. And then they were like, "Do you want to just come work for us?" And it was interesting because, had I not had that consulting experience with them, had I not seen the changes that the company has made, if Taurus in 2015 had offered me a job, I would have said thanks, but no thanks. Appreciate the
Mhm.
offer, but this is not a place that I want to, associate my name, reputation, or anything like that with. But after, spending time with Brett, after tour, seeing the facilities and seeing the culture change in the organization, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Not only do I believe in what the brand is doing, but it's been a place where I can actually have an impact and I can help shape not just the marketing messages, but even the products that we're producing, and
Yeah.
that's been really, really, I mean, it's a ton of work and we're always sprinting, but it's been a lot of fun. And I have a great team that I work with in the marketing department. My counterparts in the new product development team are awesome as well. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing your content, as you were doing YouTube videos and of course still writing on your blog pretty consistently uh, around that same time frame. Yeah, back 2020, 2019, in that year I remember seeing you were doing quite a bit of uh, content, especially revolver focused.
Hmm.
I remember watching you prepare to shoot Bianchi Cup and IDPA, I think nationals, and probably a couple other matches. I just remember seeing some of your content. You're talking about, hey, I'm prepared for this, and you're burning things down with a revolver. So you kind of got known as a revolver guy. When did that really start for you, getting into kind of headlong into revolvers?
It's always been there, right?
Mm,
Some of the when I first started just like buying guns, out in my mid 20s, because I was like, guns are cool and I want to go to the range and shoot. I bought a lot of revolvers.
mm,
My dad was of the era of law enforcement where he carried a wheel gun and then transitioned to the Beretta 92 when he was with the LA Sheriff's Department. And I remember shooting his duty gun years and years and years ago, and which is, by the way, he has a really so back then, just as a tangent, the LASD policy was you could carry, you got issued a K frame, right?
mhm.
You got issued I think it was a model 15. But if you wanted to buy your own gun, you could get whatever you wanted, so long as it was a six shot 357 Magnum that had a barrel length no greater than 6 inches and no less than three. Um,
Mhm.
and so he went and he bought a full house Bill Davis custom gun, which is called a Cougar these days. It's a Ruger Security 6 frame with a Colt Python barrel on it, right? They
Mm.
were famous for, that Ruger toughness in the frame, and then Pythons at the time were renowned for their accuracy. And the gun's got a great action job in it too. I've shot it. It is the only gun in his collections that I have informed all of my brothers that they are not allowed to have. I will fight all of them for it and I will win. Um, but so that was kind of like that sort of planted the seed. And then I would buy revolvers here and there. And then, the competing with them, the first sanctioned match I ever shot was I shot the 2009 Indiana State Steel Challenge Championship, and the only like kind of good competition gun I had at the time was Smith and Wesson 625, which is a 45 ACP six shot revolver. It's also a terrible gun for Steel Challenge. I want to like that was not the gun to take to that match.
Uh,
Um, but I shot that and I had a good time. I shot a couple of IDPA matches with revolver, and then I transitioned and focused mostly on semi-auto pistols. And I hit a plateau at one point with my shooting where I was at matches, I was consistently outrunning my headlights, where I would be shooting and transitioning the gun faster than I was getting my eyes to the target, right? Because I felt
mm,
like if I've got all these bullets in the gun, I've got time for makeups. And that
mhm.
was that was affecting my match performance. And I wanted to try to find a way to put a speed brake on myself to let me get my visual processing speed to where it needs to be. And then, because you can whip the gun around at a million miles an hour, right? But I wasn't processing with my eyes as fast as I needed to. So I took a couple of seasons and I just shot revolver. And if you've never shot revolver in IDPA, it's tough because the penalties for misses out of the down zero or the A zone are harsh, and you have like no bullets in your gun.
Yep.
Like to put it in the context, I start with the number of bullets in my gun that a USPSA shooter would just reload and dump on the ground and keep going. Right? They're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
whatever. I got six. I got 10 in this mag. That's fine. I got another mag. Let's go.
Yep.
But because of the way that IDPA was structured at the time, and the rules have changed a little bit and made this less difficult, but still tough, was at the time, all of the stages had to be what IDPA called revolver neutral. So you couldn't have like a 4-shot array and then an 8-shot array. Everything was kind of arrays of six.
Mhm.
And if I had a 6-shot revolver, that allowed me to focus in those individual arrays on driving my driving my eyes to the target, and then the gun following my eyes. And that was the developmental part of it. And then I started having fun, right? Like, and
Mhm.
I got, for lack of a better word, I got addicted to the manual sense of everything, because everything on a revolver is so manually driven, right? Like, you got to open the cylinder, eject the rounds manually, put your moon clips or your speed loaders in. Everything's very tactile, everything's very, very manually done. And I really enjoyed that, and I found in that a a way to push myself. And there was, for whatever reason, and this is still true to this day, for whatever reason, there's a level of reward that my brain gives me when I perform well with a revolver, that I do not get that same level of like good job internally if I shoot well with a semi-auto. Obviously there's exceptions to
Mm,
that, like fast coin, that kind of thing. But it's like if I go out and I burn a drill down with a wheel gun, and then I go out and I shoot that same drill with a semi-auto and beat my time by like, a half a second, if there's no reloads or something. Well, yeah, of course I did, because I don't have a double action trigger to deal with. Everything's just easier.
yep.
Um, but no, it was something that I really got into, and then I stayed into it. I got into the history of it. I started carrying them exclusively, and that just kind of became, for lack of a better word, it became my niche in the gun space. A lot of people know me as as a revolver guy, or the revolver guy in their world, and that's been a huge honor and a huge privilege to be entrusted with that knowledge. And I get hit up all the time with questions about that. I'm very fortunate that I teach at, the two biggest revolver seminars every year are Revolver Fest on the East Coast and the Pat Rogers Revolver Roundup at Gunsight. And I get to be an instructor at that. And
Hmm.
I tell you what, you want to talk about like brain bending moments for someone who, came up in the gun industry. When I stepped on the range deck at Gunsight wearing a shirt with the Gunsight logo on it as an instructor, like that, like it's for people who, that you're like, boys, we've made it. Like, this is like, and to be very clear, I'm not a gun sight instructor. That is a different thing. That is
Right.
an actual very difficult pipeline. But just to be teaching at gun sight is like, guys,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is bucket list material right there.
The,
And
the
I
Mecca.
am, oh yeah, I am thankful every time I set foot. I've been able to teach there 3 times for 3 of the Pat Rogers events now, the roundups. And I tell you what, I am thankful for every opportunity I've had there, and I will be thankful for every opportunity I get in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those are great events. I've been hoping to make one of them here soon. The Revolver Roundup has always been challenging on the calendar because that conflicts with a family thing every year, as long as it is the weekend before Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
But I'm eyeing the Revolver Fest, and so we'll
Revolver
see.
Fest is, and that one's, I mean, I'm a big fan of that one because it's 45 minutes from my house, so I don't have to like
Yeah,
fly or anything like
yeah,
that. Um, but also, the Clinton House is such a great facility, and the timing on it's a little bit gentler because it's on, like, I want to say it's like Columbus Day weekend, and nobody actually does anything on Columbus Day.
right.
So there you go, guys.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you should check that out, people. If you especially want to get some training on using a revolver. Um, I am not an expert by any means. I'm acquainted well enough and can comfortably run a revolver. I've taken a few blocks of instruction, including from like Daryl Bulkey and Wayne Dobbs and a couple guys over the years, and learned a lot. By the way, just in a few hours here and a few hours there. But I one thing I have noticed about practicing more with a revolver is this is so I want to get your take on this, and I would say this probably extends to just about anything that really forces you to work a double action trigger consistently. It helps a lot in all the other aspects of handgun shooting skill. So what's your take on that?
No, I 100% agree with that. I If you can shoot a double action revolver well, you can shoot any semi-automatic striker fired handgun well. Like, that is and the reason for that is the trigger pull is so much more difficult to master. It's so much easier during the course of a really good revolver that isn't like a high-end custom gun will have, anywhere from an 8 to a 10-pound trigger in it, right?
Hmm.
And the so if you can rapidly press an 8-pound trigger to the rear without pulling your sights off target, now make that trigger, 3.5 pounds or 4 pounds even, and make the distance of travel, a third of what it is on a wheel gun. It's gonna be really, really easy to do. And what I found is that when I take a break from shooting revolvers, because every year I'm like, okay, I've shot, 15,000 rounds to wheel guns. I need a break. I'm tired of reloading every time I think about the gun, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go shoot, I shot the Florida State IDPA championship, and I shot one of the Taurus 92s, right? The Beretta 92 clone.
Mhm.
It was like at no point did I even think about my trigger press like the whole match, because the DA press is the same as what I'm always doing, and then all of a sudden I've got a 2.5 pound single action pull, and I'm just like bang 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 bang. This is so easy, and it is, and it makes things a lot easier, because if you can manage that really difficult trigger press, the easy trigger press is going to be a piece of cake. And the other thing that it teaches you to do that has been hugely, hugely beneficial for me is to not ride the reset,
Mm.
because if you want to shoot a revolver fast, and this is something that Jerry's talked about, that everybody who's good at this has talked about, is as soon as that shot breaks, I am racing my finger to the trigger guard, because I need to get off the trigger, like to let that trigger return spring have as much power as it needs to reset that trigger as quickly as possible, so I can
Mm.
shoot the gun again. Um,
Yep.
and so I was at a media event a couple of years ago, and I was shooting one of our 1911s, and I did like a little slow-mo thing, and I see like I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I am coming all the way off the 1911 trigger and then just whacking it on the way back. And I'm hitting, I'm shooting a big steel plate at like 15 yards. Like, of course, I'm not missing it. But oh my gosh, the dudes in the comments were like, oh, that's terrible trigger control. And, da, da, da,
Yeah.
da, da. And I'm like, I'm hitting the thing. Like, my trigger control. But that's the big thing for me with revolvers is, if you can shoot a revolver well, most other handguns will be very easy for you. Well, not very easy, but they'll be easier for you to shoot, right? You're going to be able to master that trigger pull, which is why I tell people, hey, if you want a dry fire machine, get a Taurus 856 Toro. We're a 3-inch compact frame revolver, and it's optics ready. Put a plate on it, put the cheapest Hollow Sun K footprint dot that you can find on it, and then just dry fire with that. And you're going to be like, is that really what's happening during my trigger pull? Is your dot does friggin' figure eights all over the place. So
Yeah.
they're great. And
Yep.
and that as a dry fire machine is more affordable than a lot of the like dry fire like the dry fire accessories and stuff like that.
Gadgets.
Yeah, and I have nothing against the dry fire gadgets,
Right.
but you can, because it used to be back in the day, dudes would be like, hey, you want to learn you want to get good at pressing a trigger, put a set of laser grips on a J frame and dry fire that, and you will learn a lot about what's going on with your trigger pull.
Yeah. That's good stuff. That mirrors what I've experienced as well. And I don't have any revolvers with a dot on them yet. Maybe I should do something because, like, I agree that would be really telling to see the dot in an optic window and exactly what it's doing movement wise as I'm pressing the trigger. Right now I'm looking at iron sights and it tells the same story. It's just you got to be a little more discerning and really
Hmm.
watching it carefully to get that same level of detail information. But I like how you didn't just talk about practicing with a double action revolver trigger on the trigger press is beneficial, but also just learning to get things reset quickly too, being part of that equation. That's something I was just talking about in my class over the weekend about, hey guys, like when you watch me running my trigger, especially like a build drill, like that finger is coming off. And
Hmm.
so if you're still stuck in that mode of riding that reset, uh, let's break that, because usually the thing that we hear, at least I hear this, Caleb, is people will say something like, well, that's just wasted energy, wasted motion. It's less efficient to just only go to the or to go beyond the reset point. And I'm like, maybe so. However,
I mean,
have
if
you
I'm
seen Jerry work a trigger?
yeah. Like, I suppose it might be wasted energy, but at the same time, I'm shooting a double action revolver in the low .2 splits, right? So I don't know how
Yeah.
much faster I can, like, I am with the guns that I have. and the way that they're set up, I'm pretty much at the mechanical speed limit of that, and I'm coming all the way off the trigger to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think JJ is pinning and resetting his trigger when he's shooting .15 splits with a Beretta either. Um,
Yeah.
but and I think the big thing for me about pin and reset and why I am so adamantly opposed to it was something I picked up from Ernest in one of his classes where he said, the biggest problem with it isn't that it's slow, is that if you consistently train to shoot on the reset, you are getting your permission to shoot again from the reset and not from your sights. And
Mhm.
that's the problem, right? Like,
Mhm.
if my permission to shoot again is feeling that click in my trigger, and I've trained myself to do that, like, oh, ride the reset, click, bang, then that's not nearly as beneficial as letting go of the trigger, getting permission from my sights, and then initiating another clean trigger press, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the other fun thing about the reset that people don't know is like none of that like tactile reset, ride the reset stuff existed until Glock, right? Like if you
Yep.
look at the gun sight dogma back from the pre-Glock eras, there's nothing about like riding the reset. They wanted you to reset the trigger. They did teach you to keep your finger in contact with the trigger face, but it wasn't like there was no like tactile reset or anything like that. It was like let it go and then press it again. They were only concerned with what happened with the trigger in its rearward motion, not in its forward motion.
Mhm.
Glock invented this idea of the tactile reset as a thing because their gun has a really loud click, right? Like it makes a loud noise. It is a physical thing that you can feel. So they used that in their marketing and got it into like LE agencies and stuff like that. So it's very interesting to see how that infected pistol shooting, and you do still see it in things like precision rifle where they'll shoot and they'll exhale and let go of the trigger to the reset point and then inhale and then press again. That's a different discipline. Do whatever you
Mhm.
want in precision rifle shooting, but in
Right.
pistol shooting, don't pin that.
Yeah. 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 I was thinking. Oh, yeah. I've had arguments with people talking about tactile reset. They're like, "Well, that gun has a terrible, reset." I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, "Well, I
Who
can't really
cares?
feel it." I'm like, Why are you feeling it?" Like, has nothing to do with how the gun, how I actually shoot the gun. But
Yep,
here's one of the
let
thing,
go of that thing.
yeah, get off, get back on quickly. Um, the whole, like, especially dry firing with a revolver. One thing that you know, we've all probably struggled at some point, either ourselves or teaching others with this, teaching shooters to manage their sights while pressing the trigger. It When we have shorter, lighter weight triggers, perhaps with a defined wall, things of that nature, the tendency I seem to come across, Caleb, is that they'll align the sights and they're like, "Yep, that's good enough," and they may be very well prepped on the trigger, or at least taking up the slack, and they're at the wall, and they're like, "Yep, okay, sights are aligned. Okay, whack bang,"
Hmm.
And, I'm like, "No, no, 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 like, you're separating these processes of aiming the gun from triggering the gun, and we need those 2 things to happen, together. Like, in other words, we continue aiming or managing the sights while we press the trigger. That's the other thing I really like about working with a revolver or a double action trigger, is because, like, then you're literally watching and trying to maintain those sights as you're applying pressure until it goes off.
Hmm.
And so that's been a really
Yeah.
useful tool for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I teach, and when I do my revolver classes, I teach of like there's there's kind of two ways you can press a double action trigger, right? And the one that I teach is I teach the idea of rolling through the trigger. And
Mhm.
the analogy is riding a bicycle. And if there's somebody listening to this who doesn't know how to ride a bicycle, I'm sorry. I can't help you. But when you're riding a bike, you don't ever smash down with one pedal and then smash down with the other pedal, right? You pedal at a consistent rate. That rate may be fast, it may be slow. That rate is determined contextually by what you're trying to do with the bike, right? If I'm
Mm.
going up a 6% incline, I'm pedaling slow but with a lot of force. If I'm going down that 6% incline, I'm now pedaling really fast. And it's the same thing with a revolver trigger press. The thing that dictates the I press the trigger the same way from start to finish. It's continual pressure until the shot goes off. The speed at which I apply that pressure is determined by the complexity of my shot, right? If I'm shooting a wide open USPSA target at 2.5 yards, that is happening very, very quickly. If I'm shooting a Bianchi Cup target at 50 yards, it's happening at a much slower rate because I'm trying to not disturb the sights, right? And it can even, but at no point do I stop my trigger press? Because what guys will do, and I don't actually have a revolver within arm's reach to show this, but what'll happen to a lot of times is, let's say I've got an 8 pound trigger in my gun. If I start my trigger press and I go all the way through it, I have exerted 8 pounds of force to make that gun go off, right?
Yep.
If I start my trigger press and stop it, because most DA revolvers, you can kind of stop them on the notch, right? Like there'll be a
Yep.
point where the gun's fully locked up and the hammer is mostly back. And all you have to do now is apply like an additional 2-ish pounds of pressure or whatever to release the sear, right? The problem with that is if I do that on my gun with an 8 pound trigger, what I've done now is I've pulled 6 pounds and I'm holding 6 pounds, right? And I'm holding 6 pounds while I'm trying to clean up my sights, which is inducing fatigue and a bunch of other stuff. And sure, that may work if I only have to take one shot, but to use, Bianchi Cup as an example, at 50 yards, I'll have a string of fire that's 6 shots. I can't start and stop 6 trigger presses and induce that kind of fatigue. I need to roll through that trigger and just pull 8 pounds instead of 6 pounds, do an isometric exercise of holding 6 pounds and then break the last two off of the trigger. It's
Right.
uh not a great way to, one, you definitely won't do well shooting like Bianchi or bullseye with that. But yeah, the idea with that is, once you get used to that method of rolling through your trigger press, for me, it changed the kind of triggers that I like in guns. I don't particularly enjoy, the gold standard for triggers is what, the 1911 with the glass rod break, right? I don't actually
Mm.
like triggers like that. I actually like my triggers kind of mushy, where
Same.
I mean, so my favorite production trigger in any like modern current production firearm, that's not a revolver obviously, is the HK Light LEM,
Hmm.
because it's a big long revolver trigger, but it's not very heavy. I'm like, this is a great trigger. I love this. And for the people out there, if you want to get a trigger that is like the HK Light LEM trigger, but costs half or a third of what an HK costs, the Taurus G3 series, the
Hmm.
way that trigger is set up, it's like a light LEM for the people. And I'm not saying that to shine anybody on. I have two G3s. I shoot them very well. And I love, because it's really, really long take up, long roll, and then a kind of a rolling break at the end. I'm like, it's like a 4 pound revolver trigger. I really like it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it changes what kind of trigger you like, and it also kind of recontextualizes triggers for you, because people are like, "Oh, this trigger sucks," and I'm like, "Well, this trigger's fine. What are you talking about? This trigger sucks. It's 4.5 pounds. This is half the weight of what I'm used to pulling."
Hmm. Yeah. I've described it as sort of, if you, I'm trying to think of like the perfect example of where you'd encounter one of these buttons, but like just a big, good, like tactile button, not necessarily like one that has like it just has a lot of travel to it, and you just
Yeah.
push a button, and it's just like there's no like wall, there's no like anything you got to push through. You just push a button, you hear a click, it's very satisfying. You're like, yeah, cool. Like that's how I want my triggers on my guns. It's just like this. I'm just pushing a button. It's just like
Hmm.
it could be mush all day long. I don't care. Like, but when I get to the back, it goes bang, and that like that's
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 all I want.
that's good.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I remember when the M&P came out and people complained about like the trigger was mushy and it didn't have a tactile reset, and I'm like, but I don't care that it's mushy and doesn't have a tactile reset. I kind of like this.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, from time to time, it is nice to shoot like a gun that has a really like objectively good trigger, like a 2.5 pound 1911 trigger or something like that. Because then that's what's funny for me is, I'll go from shooting revolvers, then I'll shoot like striker fired guns for work or something like that, and then I'll go shoot a 1911, and I'm like, oh wow, I can shoot this really fast because there's no trigger travel, and I'm putting in no work to get that thing to go off.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I can relate. Let's we've been going just slightly over an hour, and we typically keep this about at an hour, but let's transition real quick and give you opportunity to share some updates with things going on at Taurus.
Yeah,
So what's new? What's
so
the new?
So the new is at SHOT Show. We announced the Taurus TX9. That's our first polymer frame striker fired duty pistol. We have already got a couple of LE agencies down in Brazil to adopt it. So that's going to be riding around holsters in a country that is very serious about their law enforcement pistols. Um, and so we've got that came out at SHOT in it's got three sizes. So, and to use phrases that people understand, it comes in a Glock 17, a Glock 19, and a Glock 26 size, and they have the same capacities as all of those guns. And it's really good. We've done a ton of testing. I've shot it a bunch. It's very accurate. And the good news about that gun is it is also being assembled here in the U.S. So our Brazilian partners will make the parts for it, ship them up here to the States. We build them in the States, do final QC on them here in America. And those are actually the U.S. production line is spooled up. I was just in Bainbridge, which is where our U.S. headquarters is this week, and watching them build these guns and get them out the door to consumers. So these are here and they're going.
Yeah, I liked what I got my hands on at SHOT Show. Good feeling gun, good texture, good trigger. I mean, it's definitely a very usable striker fired gun from what I could
Hmm.
see. So it'll be fun to get hands on and put some rounds down range with one at some point.
Yeah.
How about on the revolver side? Like, what are you guys liking on the revolver side?
So we didn't launch this at SHOT Show. This was kind of a mid-year launch, but we came out with the 66 Combat, which is a gun that was born out of a conversation that I had with Daryl Bolke and Brian Eastridge and our CEO a couple of years ago. And we wanted to basically be like, if you could build a medium frame gun like for the revolver autist people who
Mhm.
want to carry like a medium frame revolver, what would it look like? And the 66 Combat was the result of that. It's a 7-shot 357 Magnum. It has a round butt grip frame, so it's easier to conceal. It's got Hogue 3-finger grips on it, which taper off, but you can still get a full grip on the gun. It is drilled and tapped for our optics system, the Taurus Optics Ready option. Comes with a good fiber optic sight, and it's double action only, and it has, and this is like, I try to not throw shade at other brands. The 66 Combat has the best production double action revolver trigger in it of any gun on the market right now, with maybe the exception of like a Korth or something. But that gun's 5 grand. It had better have a better trigger. Okay. Like, if I paid $5,000 for a gun and it didn't have a better trigger in it than a $700 Taurus, I would be really pissed off. I would be livid. But
That's
no, the
fair.
66 Combat it's really cool, and it's an example of how Taurus is willing to make products for high speed end users. We have, for people who don't kind of I'll give people a very brief rundown of the Taurus revolver range, right? So we have our baseline products, right? So this is your 856 is 605, 66 is the 627, the trackers, the Raging Hunters, all of those. And then up next on the ladder, we have what we're calling our named guns. So that's like the 66 Combat, the 608 Competition are the two examples of those. Those are guns where we take a base model gun and we add a few features to it, add a few design elements to it to make it better for a specific role, right?
Hmm.
And then at the top of the tree, we have the executive grade. And the executive grades, those are true one gunsmith guns where, one guy in Brazil, he doesn't build all of them, but like, we have like 5 master gunsmiths that build these guns, right? And so one guy will get all of the parts. He'll hand fit that gun, he'll put it all together, and that gun is the executive grade guns. And these are high quality, high value products. I have, I it's nice working for the company because that means I've got every executive grade gun.
Yep.
But they're phenomenal. And if you are looking for like, if you're looking for, I'll say this too. If you are a semi-automatic pistol guy and you want to get into the revolver world, but you don't want to stockpile another caliber, go get a Taurus 692 executive grade. And I'd like to apologize for the gas-powered leaf blower that you could probably hear outside of my office right now. Um, but no, go get a Taurus 692 executive grade. Their street price around 800, $900, but it's very cool because it has a 9 mil cylinder that you can just swap in, right? Press a button, take out the 357 cylinder, slide in the 9 mil cylinder, comes with moon clips, 7 shots in 9 mil. And that way you can get into revolvers and see what all the hype's about without having to go, stock up on 357 Magnum.
Yeah. No, that's a great tip. And that's, I mean, shooting 9 millimeter out of revolver is, I think it's fun. I mean, it, especially if you got a huge stockpile of ammo. Cause like
Oh, yeah.
for me, the one thing with like shooting revolvers is it, like I got to go buy 38 special, or I don't shoot a lot of 357 Magnum, but I got to go find, and buy some 38 special and keep it, keep that supply up if I'm going to shoot it in any sort of amount of volume. But I got lots of 9 mil. So having a revolver chambered in 9 mil is just fun because I can go
Well,
to
and
the
also
range, take one ammo
38,
can and shoot all the guns.
yeah, and also 38 is 357 are like they're a lot more expensive than 9 mil. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
can like even with ammo prices, 9 mil prices going up and probably going to continue to go up for a little bit. Like a case of Federal 124 grain American Eagle is still like $250, right? A
Yep.
case of 130 grain American Eagle 38 specials is like $400.
Yep.
So nine's a lot cheaper, guys. Like, and that's actually a big part of like why I'm shooting the 692 as much as I am, because I'm like I have all this 9 mil ammo and it's a lot more affordable.
Yep. For sure. For sure. And using 9 mil with moon clips or something. I mean, at least my experience, it just drops in a cylinder really
Mhm.
cleanly.
And you get to say I need more clips and be
Yeah.
technically correct, which is the best kind of correct.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's wrap this up by coming kind of back around full circle. Earlier in the episode, we talked about Top Shot and how that, was for some people an entry into the gun world. Uh, I mean, you and I talked about this before the show, and I kind of said, I respect Taurus, and by the way, the work that the team there's been doing over the last 5, 6, 7 years has been, it's noted. I've taken notice. Many others have taken notice that the quality level of Taurus firearms has come way up from maybe what it was known for a decade or 2 decades ago. So, and I've had great success with the Taurus guns that I've tested over the last few years. I got a TX22. I've got
Love that
I've got
gun.
a G3 and a G3C that I actually quite like. Those are great little guns. Yeah, the TX22 is awesome. I've had a Taurus 605 for about as long as I've owned a gun as an adult, and it's still rocking and rolling. It's a good little gun. But anyway, what I said to you before the episode is before we went live is that it's a entry point for a lot of gun owners.
It
They
really
go to the
is.
gun store and they're like, well, I've got $300, and in today's world, there's not a lot you could buy for $300, but you can potentially pick up a decent quality Taurus firearm for $300.
You absolutely can. If you go, I like to go to some of the big box stores and kind of, see what like real world pricing is. So like our, and I'll call it entry level gun. I don't think that's necessarily fair, but right now we have
Hmm.
the Taurus GX2, which we launched 2 years ago, and that gun is designed for yeah, people who have $300 in their pocket and they need a reliable, affordable gun, right? And the the slogan that I came up with when we launched that gun was affordable doesn't mean cheap. And that
Hmm.
was the entire ethos behind that gun. And I remember at the time I was doing an interview and, someone asked me like what I meant by affordable doesn't mean cheap. And I said, and I believe this in like down to the core of my being, is that If you need a gun for personal protection, then you deserve to have a reliable gun regardless of what your budget is. And if you go into the Academy Sports in Spartanburg, South Carolina right now, and you have $250 burning a hole in your pocket, you can get a Taurus GX2, and it's going to come with 2 mags, and it's going to work. And
Mhm.
that was what that gun was designed to do. It was designed to work and be affordable. And what that has done for us as a brand, with guns, in that price point, and then guns like the TX22, is we own such a huge chunk of the first time gun owner or new shooter market, right? And we and so for me, as the guy who's in charge of a lot of this stuff, I feel a an obligation to produce as much quality educational content around these guns as I possibly can, because you may buy a GX2 or one of the new TX9s and not know how to take the gun apart. That's why if you search for GX2 disassembly, there's a video on the official Taurus USA YouTube channel on how to take this gun apart, because I, you know, to you and me, we've disassembled a million pistols at this point in our life, right? Like if you hand me a gun, I'll look
Mhm.
at it like, oh, there's the takedown lever, doot, 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 and it's in bits, right?
Right.
But imagine you are a 27-year-old kid. 27 is not a kid, but you get my point. You're 27 years old. You're buying your first gun for the first time. Your dad wasn't a hunter. Your grandpa wasn't a shooter. You don't have a culture of firearms knowledge in your life. I would I really, really, really want you to learn how to disassemble that gun from me, right? Like, I would much rather you learn that from me, from an official resource, than, your idiot friend down the street who, owns a bunch of guns. Like,
Bubba.
because I don't, yeah, I don't know Bubba, right? But I know that if you watch the Taurus video, it's, hey, here's how you unload, here's how you take this gun apart. The first thing you do is remove the magazine and set it as far away from the gun as possible. Then you visually and physically inspect the chamber. How many times? Not once, not twice, 3 times. Why 3 times? Gremlins. That's why. All right. Like, my biggest fear is not my biggest fear, but one of the fears that I have is that I will somehow fail to provide the right bit of educational information, and someone will shoot themselves on accident because they didn't have access to good information.
Yeah.
And, that's why, one of the big things that we've done at Taurus since I've been there is anytime there's a new product launch, we will put out these educational videos on how to clean them, how to take them apart, how to mount an optic to them. And it's not because, like, if you can mount an optic to a Taurus G3, you can mount an optic to a Taurus TX9, right? It's the same process, same plate actually.
Yeah.
But I'll do one for the TX9, because if you buy a TX9, you're not going to Google Taurus G3 optics installation. You're going to Google Taurus TX9 optics installation. And I want
Yep.
you to get information from a high quality, valuable source, not just, and, there's lots of really good information on YouTube. I'm not, talking badly about YouTube, but there's also a lot of not good information on YouTube. And
Yeah.
we're sometimes at the mercy of the algorithms and search engine optimization on which one of those gets presented to us.
Yep. You're not wrong about that. That's good. That's good stuff. And folks, where do you want to point people to as far as getting
Yeah.
good information and learning more about everything you're up to?
Yeah, so for corporate content, taurususa.com, rossiusa.com, heritagemanufacturing.com, and then I won't list all of the socials for those, but if you search on Instagram and Facebook for Taurus USA, Ross USA, Heritage Manufacturing, you'll find the 3 brands. For me, follow me on Instagram at Radicaleb. You take the word radical and Caleb and you mash them up into one word and you get Radicaleb. Facebook on facebook.com/Caleb Shooting. And then I have a Substack, which is doing very well for me. I'm very happy about that.
Mm.
And we talk it. If you subscribe for free, you'll get 4 free articles a month. If you pay to subscribe, you get an extra 4 articles a month, and we cover everything from training to. I'm doing a series on African hunting right now for paid subscribers, and that's radicaleb.substack.com. So if you want to follow me there, that would be great. We talk a lot about revolvers. I just did an article about revolvers that came out today. So
Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, 8 articles a month or yeah, articles on Substack. staying busy writing 2 a week then.
So, I mean, not it's okay. So, yes, for some people that would be a lot. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but when I was blogging, and that was like one of my main sources of income, I was writing I was writing 2 to 3 articles per day, five
Per day,
days a
yeah.
week,
Right.
to keep up with that content machine. And I estimate that I probably wrote, in the period where I was a very active blogger, I probably wrote 3.5 to 4 million words. So
Yeah.
I've gotten, and that's, it's basically, think of that as like, dry firing for, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. You're going to get really good at a bunch of stuff. And I got good at typing and
Yeah.
translating words out here into words in here. So there are times when I get a little slow and I'm like, ooh, I got to write something today. What are we going to write about? But there's always something on the internet to write about. So
Yeah, I just mean, writing 8 a week or twice a week, when you got a full-time job, that's where it's like, "Oh, wow," like, "Good for you, man. Way to keep it going." I'll have to
thank
subscribe to
you.
your Substack. I didn't realize that you had, Substack, so I'll go find you and add you to the list.
Awesome, man. Thank
I look
you.
forward to that. Well, it's been fun chatting and kinda covering a lot of different, avenues of thought and things, and learn a little bit more about you, and, uh, dude, keep up the great work. Look forward to seeing more from you in the coming months and years, and we'll maybe do this again, revisit things on the podcast again. If you got anything you want to, put out there, let me know.
Will do.
Folks, if you enjoyed this episode, let us know too. You can hit us up. You can always email us podcast@concealedcarry.com is the best way to reach us, because we watch that email pretty carefully for commenters and folks from the podcast that want to share ideas, comments, questions, or concerns. You got a concern, hit me up. That's always fine too. But Caleb, thank you for your time today. Good luck with all your projects and all the shooting you're doing. Uh, and look forward to the next time we can touch base in person again.
Awesome. Thanks, Riley. Appreciate it.
Well, folks, until next time, a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true.